Hi, this is Mrs. Sue, and we're working on homework number 14, which is from chapter 5, section 3, page 238, numbers 2 through 38 even. I will be only going through a few of these questions in this video. Number 2, I'm taking 3/4, subtracting it with 2/3. Now, the strategy that I taught you in class is called PIXER. So I will show that to you in the video today. If you choose to use the strategy, please do it. There are some students that I talk to individually that you have to be doing the strategy. So here we go. If I divide the problem, first the P is to copy down the problem, which is 3/4 minus 2/3. This is just going to help me set it up. Now, they are actually not mixed numbers that need to be changed to improper, so I could skip this step. The X means I'm going to multiply. I stands for improper, by the way. I'm going to multiply a number so that I can get E, which is the equivalent fractions, which will give me common denominator. So this part right here, okay? So right now the 4 and the 3 are not common, so to make them common I will multiply them together to give me 12 and 12. To multiply 4, I'm going to multiply it by 3. 4 times 3 gives me 12, so whatever I do to the denominator I'm also going to do to the numerator up there. Then I do 3 times 3, which gives me 9, so that's the equivalent fraction of the 3/4 that I started with in the problem. Then for 3, I'm going to multiply by 4 in the denominator. I'm going to do to the top what I do to the bottom. So 2 times 4 give me 8. Then I'm going to reduce those two fractions together. So 9 minus 8 over 12. So I subtract the numerators, the num, and then I keep the denom. I'm just shorthanding that right there, giving me a final answer of 1/12. I'm going to skip to problem number 6. Number 6, I have here a 4/16 plus a 1 and 3/8. And just looking at this question, I already notice that one of the fractions is not simplified. And so if I can simplify problems before I begin them, it'll actually make the work a little easier later. So I am going to do that. So I'm going to simplify this fraction right here. Okay, if I simplify, I can I can divide both of those numbers by 4, giving me a new fraction of 1/4. So I'm going to, in my P section, write 1/4 plus 1 and 3/8. I can change them to improper. So 1/4 stays 1/4, but 1 and 3/8, I'm going to multiply the 1 and the 8, add the 3, giving me 11, keeping the denominator 8. And then X, I'm going to multiply fractions so that I get a common denominator for the E, which stands for equivalent fraction of from the problem. So the common denominator here is going to be 8 and 8. So for 1/4, I'm going to multiply 4 by 2 in the denominator. So whatever I do to the denominator, I do to the numerator. 1 times 2 gives me 2. And this fraction doesn't change, so I just keep, so I can drag that across and bring the 11 over. This was an addition problem, so R means to reduce or to simplify. Now, if you didn't simplify from the beginning, then you might need to simplify your answer later. But I'm going to take 2 plus 11, keeping the denominator. That gives me 13/8. If I make it mixed, I'm going to be dividing the 13 and the 8. Remember the little rhyme, top in, bottom out, to help me when I divide. So sometimes the top might be bigger, sometimes it might be bigger on the bottom. But I'm going to do 13 divided by 8. It goes into it once. I get a remainder of 5, which is going to give me the numerator in the fraction. So 1 whole, 5 the remainder, 8 as still the denominator, and that would be my final answer. skipping down to problem number 18. Skip down to number 18. Here we go. 3 over n minus 3 over 10. Now, why is there this variable n? Remember that it represents any number, okay, any number here except for 0. We cannot have zeros in a denominator or fraction, so it could be any number, positive, negative, whole number, any integer except for 0. So what I'm going to do is do PIXER. Now this problem is actually going to take me not too long, only because once I write down the problem and rewrite it, I'm going to try to do the improper. Now I don't have to because they are not mixed. I'm going to skip that step. Then my x I'm going to multiply. Now I'm looking for e, which is the common denominator. Now if one of them is n and the other is 10, just like I would multiply the two numbers in the denominator to get my common denominator, I could always do that strategy. I'm going to actually do the same thing here. I'm going to multiply 10 times n and get 10n, and that's going to be my common denominator. So remember, e also is the part where I do common denominator. E standing for equivalent. And so I'm going to multiply something, a new fraction, with n to get 10n, which will be 10. So if I do to the denominator, I also do to the numerator. So then 3 times 10 gives me 30. And the denominator is 10n. In my next fraction, 10, if I multiply something to get 10n, I multiply by n in the denominator also, as well as in the numerator. So 3 times n gives me 3n. Then I'm going to reduce the r section. I'm reducing, and I'm going to subtract my problem right here. Oh, I'm having a little trouble here. I'm going to take 30, subtract with 3n in my numerator, keeping my denominator as 10n. Those, remember, represent the slices of pizza. And my final answer would just be this. And why is it that I do not subtract 30 minus 3n and maybe get 27n over 10n? That's not true because remember when we talked about terms and when we talked about like terms, what are like terms? They are the terms that have the same variable. Those are the terms that we can combine together because they are alike. Now because 30 doesn't have an n, but the minus 3n does have an n, we actually cannot subtract them. Now, if there were n next to the 30, then I can get 27n over 10n. However, there isn't. So I'm just going to leave that as is, and that's going to be the answer to my subtraction question. And I'm going to work through one more question here in this video, number 26. I see a bunch of negatives here. And the rest of the questions we will do in class. Negative 6 1/6 plus a negative 2 2/9. I'm going to do PIXER. Now P is the problem, so my problem is negative 6 1/6. I'm going to add negative 2 2/9. And then I'm going to change the problem to I, which is improper. So when I change this problem, a negative fraction to improper, I kind of ignore the negative. Okay, so when I multiply the whole number and the denominator, I'm just going to multiply 6 times 6 and then add the 1, giving me 37, and then a 6 in the denominator, and then you just attach back on the negative. Okay, same thing for the fraction below. I'm going to forget that the negative was there, multiply 2 times 9, adding the 2 afterwards, giving me 20 over 9, keep the denominator, and then tacking on the negative. Okay, I'm going to keep the negative with the 20 and the negative with the 37. Now, the common denominator that I want to find between 6 and 9 would be 18. That's going to be the lowest. If you got 54, that's fine. You just have to do more reducing later on when you do the R. So to get 6 times something equals 18, that would be 3. So I'm going to also multiply that in the numerator. Okay. When I multiply negative 37 times 3, I'm going to do that to the side over here, giving me 111 and a negative 111. And then 9 times, that's going to give me 2, gives me 18. So negative 20 times 2, I can do that in my head. I'm going to get negative 40. I'm going to reduce this. This problem, going back to the beginning, said I was supposed to add. So I'm going to add negative 111 added to negative 40 over 18, giving me negative 151 over 18. And I'm going to change that to a mixed fraction by putting the top in and the bottom out when I divide. So when I divide 151 in, 18 out, I will ignore the negative for now because at the very end I will give the whole number the negative and then put my fractional part right next to it. As I divide, I realize that, I think 8 is going to be the greatest. So 18 times 8 gives me 144, and then 151 minus 144 is going to give me a remainder of 7. So that remainder 7 gives me the 7 in my numerator, 18 in my denominator, and then my answer will be negative. So that would be my final answer right here. So you will see that PIXER is a good strategy for a question such as this with the negative fractions, and with these, especially because they were mixed fractions. Now going back to question number 2 in the video, the problem was pretty simple. You could skip a lot of those steps. So this strategy is still wonderful to use and to write out. And you can still just write out skip, skip if we don't need to do that part in the steps. Any other questions that you may have, bring them into class tomorrow, and I will answer those for you in class.